Our first speaker is Rowan from Club Safe, Manager Clubs New South Wales. Will mandatory pre-commitment solve problem gambling? Are there alternative solutions that will better assist people with a problem without destroying an entire industry? Welcome, Rowan.
Good evening. Hello. Mandatory pre-commitment would force anyone who wanted to use a gaming machine to register for a smart card. Cardholders would be encouraged to set a limit on that card. Assuming a gambler did choose to set a limit, once that limit was reached, the system would theoretically lock them out of playing any gaming machine in the country for a set period of time. And to do this, every poker machine and every smart card would have to be linked to a central database, which raises privacy concerns and poses serious technical difficulties, as currently all Australian jurisdictions use different systems. My role here today is to share my perspective on mandatory pre-commitment as a counsellor who has worked in this field, assisting problem gamblers for over 12 years. The gambling research and treatment industry, as I like to call it, it's a fairly small community in Australia where everybody knows everyone. As you'd expect among the academics and counsellors, there's a wide variety of viewpoints as to what therapeutic approaches to treating problem gambling are most effective and what legislative approaches best work in favour of preventing destructive gambling. I must say that out of all of the contentious ideas and issues that have divided the gambling research and treatment community, mandatory pre-commitment takes the cake. I have never seen an issue so divisive as this one. For the record, this gambling counsellor does not believe that mandatory pre-commitment is an effective tool for the prevention of destructive gambling behaviour. If I thought that there was some hope that mandatory pre-commitment could work, I would need to balance this with the reality as to whether clubs can incorporate this tool, sustain this tool, and indeed afford its introduction. There are gambling counsellors who do see value in mandatory pre-commitment. Many of these colleagues of mine, they work for large welfare organisations, some of which have publicly come out in support of the Wilkie-Xenophon proposal, and as I see it, doing so without adequately investigating the value of this tool. There seems to be a base assumption among these well-known charities that because this measure is intended to help problem gamblers, that it therefore surely must help. This, I think, is a major shame because there are problem gambling counsellors like myself who've spent years working with problem gamblers, and in doing so, we've built an understanding of the sorts of beliefs and behaviours that motivate a problem gambler. It's this experience, this understanding, that makes it hard for counsellors like me to see any real value in mandatory pre-commitment as a tool to treat or prevent problem gambling. I'm very concerned that this measure is being pushed through at a time when the views of this country's leading authority on destructive gambling, its causes and its treatment are being all but ignored. Australia's own Professor Alex Blazinski is one of the world's leading authorities on problem gambling. He's consulted the world over for his expertise on this subject and is regularly sought as a keynote speaker at problem gambling conferences right across the globe. In his submission to the recent Joint Select Committee hearings into gambling reform, the professor voiced serious concerns that pre-commitment may actually prolong problem gambling because it delays people from reaching a crisis point. The professor says several studies have shown that gamblers do not typically seek help until they've reached a crisis, and that pre-commitment may delay this occurring, therefore drawing out the length of a gambling problem. These parliamentarians who seek to introduce mandatory pre-commitment simply don't understand the intense and destructive nature of the relationship that a problem gambler has with gambling and the ruthless lengths that they go to ensure that nothing will stand between them and their gambling activity. Problem gamblers use gaming machines differently to the majority of players. They use the machines as a self-medicator, as an anaesthetic, to ease the pain in their lives. They may have easily have ended up escaping through other options like alcohol, drugs, shopping, computer games, or overeating. People who gamble destructively on the pokies are disconnected. They're disconnected from the time they spend gambling, they're disconnected from their money and the value of their money. A $50 note simply becomes a ticket to extend the state of numbness for as long as possible. Whereas you and I might get excited about a linked jackpot win or a feature, the problem gambler is absent, feeling no joy. A jackpot just buys them more numb time. The numbness is like a drug to the problem gambler. Nothing will stand in the way of achieving that state of, as some call it, being in the zone. This desperation to return to the zone and to remain in the zone for as long as possible makes the problem gambler a ruthless person. Whereas a mandatory pre-commitment scheme would most likely alter the relationship that you or I might have to playing a machine due to it all becoming too difficult, the problem gambler will ensure nothing stands between them and their fix. Just like a heroin addict, the problem gambler will always find ways to get around the system and to go to extraordinary lengths to get their fix. Problem gamblers are ruthless and resourceful. Just a few points in summary. The gambling environment in Australian clubs is one of the most stringently regulated in the world. I've attended conferences in places such as Northern America, and the feedback that we get from leading authorities and researchers in that part of the world is what has been introduced in the last 10 years in the Australian jurisdiction leaves the world for dead. It's one of the most highly regulated markets in Australia in terms of recreational gambling. Another point, I'm especially worried that imposing mandatory pre-commitment on the overall pokey playing population could ironically drive players away from the regulated and monitored environment of their club and into the non-regulated, unmonitored, and therefore extremely dangerous environment of online gambling. And it's happening out there. And I'm dealing with clients, one the other week, who in the space of 10 days lost $50,000 through his credit card on online gambling. It's a major concern. In reality, we can never completely eliminate a minority of people behaving destructively with gambling. I don't believe mandatory pre-commitment is an effective barrier between gamblers and their own destructive behaviour. Instead, our focus needs to shift to preventative steps that can be taken, such as primary and high school education programs, to encourage people to ultimately make more informed choices if, as adults, they wish to gamble. The most effective treatment path is one that principally involves regular face-to-face counselling in conjunction with secondary tools including self-exclusion, re-engaging with families and friends, and replacing gambling with other pursuits that foster meaning and purpose in their lives. Even though this proposal to introduce mandatory pre-commitment is a stupid idea, some good has come from it. It's brought the issue of problem gambling to the forefront of national debate. Thank you.